Okay, so I'm going to go through the process of building a civil cell. We're going to actually just move up. I'm just in a design file where I've got a sample data down here. So probably what I'll do is I'll build the cell up here, and then just come down and place it down here to make sure its functions okay. We're just going to build just a quick T intersection. I'm placing a line. I'm placing the reference elements first. Kind of the rules for reference elements are, they can be lines, arcs, complex, etc. But they can't be dependent on each other. In other words, I wouldn't, so basically what I'm placing for this T intersection is a edge of pavement and then a secondary road center line. In other words, a primary road or main line, edge of pavement, and then a secondary road center line. So I wouldn't want to place that secondary road center line and like do a intersection snap, because now that element there is ruled to this element because of that snap there, right? And really the reason why is because if I came in and tried to create a civil cell, and we'll just kind of ignore the cell name, reference names, but we'll just kind of go through the process. So if I click here and I locate the reference and I try to locate this, when it says element depends on previous external reference. So that's really why you can't, you can't have, your reference elements can't depend on each other. A lot of times what I'll do, so if we were, some type of cells, particularly curb and gutters, a lot of times we'll use maybe edge of pavement or your curb flow line, but you'll come in and use the, you may need to use the this offset command to maybe locate the gutter edge, maybe from the edge of pavement, and then copy parallel again, right, to if we'll go 0.5 for your back top of curve here. I'm going to come in and just change these lengths so we can kind of zoom in a little closer to what I'm talking about here. And just another example, so I can't build a cell like a curb ramp because these two elements are dependent on this. Now I can come in here and just click that and remove the rule, but quite honestly, a lot of times I like to come in and just like place, if I got a copy parallel, I'll just come in and build some new elements on top of those, and then come in and delete those copy or those offset partial, or not the offset partials, but the single offset entire elements. So now basically I've got three elements there that are not dependent on each other. And one other thing about references, and then we'll move on. When you actually create a reference, it's good to give it a name. At least give it a name called ref, so that when you place it, you've got an element there that you can go in and go to element information or element properties, and that you can see that we've got a featured element. Yeah, so like this. All right. And quite honestly, it'd be great to have a featured element, but I've used non-featured or no featured for quite a while, and that works okay. So, all right, so taking off with these references again. So I've placed, and we're building, like I said, a basic T intersection. So I'm going to come in and just place the mainline edge of pavement. I'm going to place this secondary road center line. And quite honestly, this is the references generally built for a T intersection. Mainline edge of pavement, secondary road center line. I'm going to add one more just so you can get an idea of how points work. For points to be able to use, and really I'm going to use this point as a length control, but I'm going to come in and just choose, it's got to be a featured point here. So this point really doesn't make any sense. It's geom property corner, really doesn't make any sense with what I'm building here, but I just grabbed something that has a feature about it. That size is kind of small, so let me look. See if we can get a bigger one here. A little bigger. Really just want a little bigger sail. And that may be a little bit bigger, but we'll use that one. Alright, so this is really going to be, so I've drawn on my references first. This is going to be my 3 references. Mainline edge of pavement, side road center line, and then really this point here will be used for a data point as a length control of how long I want this civil sail to go down this alignment here. Alright, like I said, this doesn't have to be done, but it is an option, you know, when you're building a basic T intersection civil sail. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to linear, and I'm going to go to modeling, and this is GDOT's workspace, so miscellaneous, and I'm going to choose Geom civil sail control. Alright, and then I'm going to turn this on so that active feature definition is used. But as far as these features, there's generally 3 I use here in civil sails. This Geom civil sail control is a very important element. In other words, it's needed to build or control some aspect of the civil sail. So it's actually a purple line. So it's one that you want to be looking for, and it's one that you want to use when it's a primary control element that's controlling the horizontal or vertical geometry of a sail. This draft DNC, that's it's a construction class here, where this one here is not. But the draft DNC, that's generally used in a civil sail where it's not that important as far as controlling the horizontal and vertical aspect of a civil sail, but it's used occasionally. I'll use it quite a bit where I'm doing offset partial and really just placing a element there to let a template to hang on to. Alright, and then the last, this match line, is generally drawn along your edge of pavement between, like for a basic T, between the PC, PT, or PC, whatever you're going to call it, PC, basically the ends of these curves where they tie there. And we'll kind of go through that a little bit more as we go through the sail. So I'm going to go in and choose this. I'm going to come in and single offset partial. I'm going to set that offset to 0. Alright, and then I'm going to come in and do an intersection snap here. Alright, and then I'm going to switch to, I like to switch to length here by just hitting the right arrow or my left arrow on the keyboard. And you may not have to do that in this version, in actually open roads, and maybe SS4 you had to do that. I can't really remember, but that's become a habit. And then what I'm going to do is just snap to that point there to control the length of that civil sail. Alright, then I'm going to come in a couple more times, and I'm probably should have named this, but I'm going to actually call this probably CC underbar civil sail, CC civil sail underbar center line. Alright. Then nothing's profiled yet, right? So if we kind of look and see where we're at, nothing's profiled up here yet. Alright, then I'm going to come in and place a couple of more. And I'm going to actually go ahead and name this turn lane underbar control underbar left. Take out that. Turn lane control left. So I'm going to come in and click here. And then I'm going to come in, I'm just kind of do I don't want to snap to this, I like snapping to the reference elements as much as possible. I mean, it's fine to snap to elements that are going to be in the sail, right? But I do like to, if I've got in other words, I could snap to the intersection of this purple line and this down here, right? Or I could snap to there and then come over here and make sure that intersection snap is to these 2 elements there. Alright, so I'll do that one more time just so you can see how I did it. So So I'm going to come in and I'm going to offset this. Partial offset 0. That's correct. But I'm going to start at this intersection here. So I'm going to snap and then do a hard snap there. So I know I'm not picking up that purple. I don't think it would hurt you, but we'll do it that way anyway. And then I'm going, for the length, I'm going to set this to 75 feet. Then I'm going to do the same thing. Turn that off, that length, uncheck that, and then do the same thing here. And I'm going to go this way, 75 feet. Now, why 75 feet? Well, quite honestly, it really doesn't matter, other than what I'm going to do. I've got to fit a 35-foot radius here. So, in other words, I'm going to come in and I'm fixing to copy parallel this purple line here, purple element there, right? And create some edge of pavement. But then I'm going to come in and place an arc between that edge of pavement and this purple line right here. And really the reason I'm doing this, quite honestly, it's not necessarily needed, but what it allows you to do is to, if you got a turn lane, you can just quickly pick this element up, move it off that edge of pavement, right, 12 feet. Now you got a room to add a turn lane if you want to. All right, and then next I'm going to come in and I tell you, I think I may go ahead and just start the profiling process. Like I said, I could go further. In other words, I could build this cell 2D entirely and then start profiling. But before, it's kind of a common practice of mine before I start introducing intervals. Like before I start trimming elements, I like to apply elevation. So I'm going to just turn this off here. And then I'm going to come in and we're going to put some elevations on these elements. So constant, we're going to set this to 100. And I'm going to choose those reference elements, right? Alright, and you can see these profiles here. And then I'm going to come in and profile these purple line, or purple elements here. So I'm going to use profile by slope. And I'm going to go ahead and set that feature. And then I'm going to choose that element, reset, choose that. And then I'm going to choose this element, that element, reset. And then, alright, so now I've got those three elements there. Profile, I'm going to look at this name here. We'll call that civil cell underbar control. Civil cell CC turn lane control. Underbar left. Then I'm going to just copy that. Accept that. And then on this one over here, we'll call that pasted and call it right. So that's all those really are there for, is for a turn lane control. 75 feet on the distance. I'm going to place a 35-foot arc here, so as long as it fits within this length, I'm good. You know, I wouldn't want to have a 25-foot, right, and then try to place a 35-foot radius in there. It's just not going to fit. And you could go the other way. You could go longer, right? As far as this length control, if I want to move this down, quite honestly, it's probably too long. That's about 300 something feet. And you know, if I want to grab that and move that point to like right there, I can do that, and that drags this down as well. All right, so let's go ahead and move a little bit further now. We're going to go and draw some edge of pavement next. So I'm going to come in and go to main, and this is going to be the main EOP. Then I'm going to come in and just do a single offset entire element. We'll set this to 12. I'm going to turn spiral transitions off. Then I'm going to come in and do, in other words, instead of having just a true transition, the software uses, if you choose this, it uses a spiral element to actually perform the transition. Alright, so I am going to turn mirror on. You can see my edge of pavement set there, and then I'm going to just copy parallel, or do offset entire element, that element. And then really I'm ready to sit here and draw my well, let's go ahead and profile these. So next, like I said, I mentioned this earlier, but I like to profile elements before they become an interval. Alright, so locate first element profile. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to choose this. I want to reset. Locate the reference. And quite honestly, I could choose this element here or this element right there. Either one should be fine. I like to go back to my reference element for profiling if at all possible. So, like I said, it wouldn't matter either way whether I use that or this element. I am going to use what I generally do. And I am going to put this at 2% slope down. In other words, we're just giving this a normal crown slope there. Now I'm going to come in and place a simple arc. We're going to use a radius of 35 feet. Trim, extend. I tell you, I could trim, extend both. I think what I'm going to do is trim the head, though. I'm going to come in and choose that purple element as my back. That says my head, data point, and trim only the head. I think in GDOT civil sales, I actually trimmed that. Well, it's probably a little bit better if I didn't, because I can easily grab this and scoot it over. Where if that was a trimmed element, and I can also grab it and change the length there. Where if it was trimmed, I'd either have to right-click a bunch to get to that interval's parent before I could actually edit that distance, or do the editing in element property. So I think this is maybe a little bit better than what's set up in GDOT sales there, but either way is okay. It's just the way I'm going to do it this time. So let's go do the next one. So for the left side, 35 feet ahead. And then I want to profile those elements. So I'm going to come in and do a quick profile transition. Parabolic is fine. And I'll choose that. Your options are parabolic or linear. And all that command's doing is it's just saying, hey, it's a quick profile transition from where that arc intersects this element down here, the elevation, it intersects it down there, and then the elevation, it intersects it here. In this particular case, we chose a parabolic. If I actually look at this profile, it's really going to probably appear a straight line. Well, it's actually parabolic, even though I'm 100 on all these elements there. And that's because I projected 2% slope down there. That's why we said if I'd been tying to this element, it would have been a straight line. All right, but you can change that, any time. If you want to make it linear, right, you can change it to linear. And you can see the difference there. Change it back to parabolic. All right, and then I really think I think the next step is to build a terrain model and start looking in linear and surface templates. But the only what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a terrain model for the pavement area, right? Because of that, it's because of the shape of this area. There's really no good way to model it off of here and off your main line, off your edge of pavement. So I'm going to build a terrain, use a surface template. And then I'm going to place linear templates that draws everything outside the pavement here. Now, instead of me having to drop 4 linear templates, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to go in and combine these I'm going to make a complex so that I only have one element on this side and one element on this side. So one template drop over here, one template drop over there. That's the only reason I'm doing this here. And you don't have to do it. It just saves you from, instead of placing 4 linear templates, you can just place 2 linear templates. I'm going to come in and choose that. And then I'm going to come in and choose that. And then if you complex a horizontal and the horizontal elements, the pieces were already profiled, which is the case here. You want to open up the profile view of that complex and complex the vertical. I'm going to come in and complex by elements here. I'll just set this one to automatic. There. I'm going to make that active. Then I'm going to come in and do the same thing on this other side. Let's open up the profile view. Let's make this complex. Let's make this active. Alright, and then really we're ready to, we can place linear templates on this. I actually like to place the surface templates first, just so, you know, what you don't want to do if you're drawing as far as templates, we're drawing the edge of pavement. So what I don't want to do is have my template draw it also. Because if you do, you wind up with two elements right on top of themselves. So what that does, it makes it hard for the end user to select that. Alright, so to kind of get a, you know, like I said, I think the next thing I'm going to do is create a terrain. But before I do that, I have to actually have this end here closed. So this is where I'm going to come in and use that match line feature. So let's just scroll back up. We're going to use the modeling miscellaneous match line. And then I'm going to come in and just do a single offset partial. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to choose, quite honestly, the key point snap would work, but I'm going to choose origin snap. Snap to that. And then you can kind of see, I'm going to switch to length here. I'm going to untoggle that. And I really think the reason I switched to length there, station really doesn't hold up in civil sales, right? Because you're building on these references that are stationed like 0 to whatever or whatever. And then you're going to places on different references that have totally different stationing. That's the reason that stationing doesn't kind of hold up in civil sales. So we'll come in and just snap there. All right. So I've got that there horizontally. It's a GML is what it's called. And then I'm going to come in and just do a profile by slope. We'll set this back to 0. And I'm going to choose that, reset. And then I will choose that. Alright, so I've got that there. One thing, I can't remember I'm trying to remember how I profiled that. So I kind of think I did this one probably wrong. So 0% is okay, but it's more like I probably should have put this at -2. So that when it's right on top of this element here, it don't matter if you 0%, 2%, 100%, it really doesn't matter. It's going to be the same elevation because it's right on top of this element there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. But where this comes in and helps you with what I'm doing here, I'm going to change that to -2 as well. Where that comes in handy is if you do bump this out, right? So if I come in and just scoot this out, right, and then come in and do a make a turn lane here. That is, you know, if you're in a normal crown situation, you're at 2% off that. Where if I'd have left that 0, you know, that wouldn't have been ideal. It wouldn't have been what you'd normally do. I'm going to shrink this back down to 0. All right, let's get back to building the cell. So the terrain model next. So from elements, I'm going to choose boundary elements. And edge method none. And I'm going to set this to propose finish boundary. And I'm going to call this pavement surface. Alright, then I'm going to come in and choose that. Choose this. Choose that. Reset. Confirm that boundary. Confirm the edge method of none. You know, I'm saying edge method of none because you know, that's really the edge method is how you're handling the boundary. Well, I actually use boundary elements to choose. So you can see my terrain. And now it's asking me next. It's just kind of rolled into this. If it didn't, you'd need to go to feature management and say add features. Right, and then just choose the terrain model. Choose the locate the element to add. That's going to be this element there, which is going to be added as a break line, right? So we'll just confirm that. And then quite honestly, I'm ready to place a surface template now. So I'm going to go to Model Detailing, Apply Surface Template. I'm going to come up here and we'll use the asphalt pavement surface template. And I'll choose that. Alright. You can see what a surface template does for you. You know, it basically just adds depth to a terrain model. All right, one thing I hadn't mentioned is our stroking options on these elements. So if I go to properties, just by default, linear stroking set to 10. I'll be honest, that's probably a little high. So what you can do, I'm gonna just choose those 3 elements there all together, and I'm gonna change that linear stroking to 5 feet. And if you'll watch those triangles change a little bit in a 3D view, when I do that. You know, so it's really just how often those triangle edges are hitting there. You know, probably 10 might have been okay for an intersection, but to get something like an ADA ramp, a curb ramp, you know, the linear stroking would be more like a foot. And this curve profile stroking is exactly what it says, stroking in curves, and then the profile stroking there as well. Those values, I generally just go with default, but those, you know, in a real tight spot vertically, those or through a curve, you know, if you're having some issues with triangulation, or you need some you know, to increase the number of triangles, those 2 items would be worth being looked at. I generally leave them 0.07. Everything looks pretty good. All right, so apply linear template next. So I'm going to come in and lock start, lock to end. And I'm going to come in and just go to the linear template folder, T intersections, and I'm going to grab the one with the sidewalk here. All right, then I'm going to choose that. Okay. And then I'm going to come in and choose this one. All right, I'm pretty much done with the cell. Now, there are some differences between this and what's in the delivered T intersection. A couple of things. I actually have a break line that comes off this edge of pavement here. Let me just turn construction class off. So basically, I have a line, just comes down right here, and it lets you pull, and it doesn't go all the way to the edge of pavement. It just comes in about 20 feet, I think. But it allows you to push that 2% down, and I include it as a break line in this pavement surface terrain. So, you know, as you change these radius values, if it's a larger intersection, for sure, I think you're going to want to carry down that 2% grade closer to your mainline edge of pavement, right? And adding that line, like I said, it's not here. What you're seeing there is just the interval up here. But I actually include an additional line right there. It's 20 feet long initially, and you just change the length to, you know, to a certain amount, and just let, you know, basically what this thing will do, it'll just kind of go from the end of that line and kind of warp to meet this edge of pavement here. All right, so that's one thing I do. Another thing I do is I include 2 terrain models and in the T intersections. The reason I do that is when I place an island, I have to profile off of one of them, and then I have to clip this one, right? So the pavement surface one. So in other words, I generally have a terrain called for profiling islands, and if you placed an island over here, you would after you placed the island, you would profile that using the profile from surface command, and you'd profile that island off of that for profiling island terrain. And then what you would do, you'd come back and go to terrains, and you'd say add feature, and I'd add a void and choose the pavement surface terrain here, and then choose this closed edge of pavement around that island. So basically what that would do would allow me to clip out that pavement area in the area of that island. You really can't profile off this and then clip it, right? Because that kind of creates a circular dependency. So that's why I carry 2. So that's really the only differences. but that, and then also I don't use this point for length control. So I think I'm pretty much done. The one thing important thing that I really wish I'd have done a little bit earlier in this process, when you draw your first few elements, you want to test and make sure that everything's holding up. And the way I test is I just come in and I don't worry about civil cell name, don't worry about reference. In other words, I kind of go through and act like I'm going to create a cell, but I actually don't create it. So I go through the process of locate a reference. I'm not worried about the names, right? But when I see that everything's highlighting, I know that cell is most likely going to be built correctly. Now, if I'd have done something like, let me just back up here. So I wonder if I'd have missed this snap when I did this intersection snap here. Go in here and change this up. So I'm going to come in and just, so say I missed. Okay, so say I just slightly missed that snap there. That's a little bit further than I can see. There's a little gap there. But so if I come in now and try to create a civil cell, choose that, choose that point, nothing's highlighted, right? And it's because that first element that's controlling everything is not ruled by a snap to this intersection there, right? So that's why, and I don't wait this far generally. In other words, once I draw 3 or 4 elements, I'm gonna come in and just quickly act like I'm building a civil cell, choose all the reference elements. If everything's highlighted, and I just reset out of the command and keep on working on the civil cell. All right, so what I'm gonna actually do is just do an undo, and then I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna just undo that command so that this holds up. And let's go build a cell now. I'm gonna say create civil cell. We're gonna call this I'm gonna just call it my T. All right, and then this is a little confusing right here. It says locate reference. So, most people are just going to locate the reference there, right? But what you really need to do, you need to give your reference a name first. Main line, edge of pavement. And I'm going to put, you want to be as descriptive as possible on these names. I'm going to put profile in the name there. And then now I'm going to choose a reference. So name your reference, then go select it. All right, and then secondary road, center line. All right, and then profile. And I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth. I'm gonna say like 50 feet, man, something like that. All right, so now I'll go choose the secondary road center line. And then I'm gonna come in and say data point for length control, and then 50 feet min from mainline EOP. Right, so I'm saying basically here data point for a length control, and maybe I should have said secondary road length control, and a minimum of 50 feet. Your data point needs to be at least 50 feet off your mainline edge of pavement, which in this particular case, this point is more like 100 feet. Right. So, but what I'm saying, 50 feet. If you've got a skewed, this 35. I don't know what this distance is from here to that PC, but you at least need that much as a minimum. However far that distance is, right? But you really need a little bit more than that, because if you're working with a skewed intersection, that's going to push one of these sides out further and pull one side further in. But that 50 feet gives you a little wiggle room there. All right, so here's my last reference. All right, there's no more references, so I'll reset. Optional references, I've never used one. I think a good example of what they would be, you could build a maybe like a roundabout with just 3 approach connections, right, or 3 approach alignments, and then you could have two optional approach alignments, and that would allow you to have one cell and be able to place either a roundabout with 3 approach alignments, 4 approach alignments, or 5 approach alignments. But I've never used one, so I'm going to reset and then accept the cell. All right, then we'll place this cell, and to place it, since it's actually in this cell, I can just go choose place civil cell and say active DGN. Well, or I can click on it and say place civil cell here. So I'm going to come down, and I'm going to actually come in right here. All right, and then we're going to place, so just going through the prompts, mainline edge of pavement, secondary road center line, I'm going to choose this, and then a data point for secondary road length control, 50 feet minimum for mainline edge of pavement. I'm going to just data point right there. All right, and that geometry looks great. And notice the direction of those arrows actually matches the direction of those arrows, or the direction of the refs that cell was built on. In other words, that cell was built with the main line edge of pavement going from left to right, and your secondary road center line going away from the main line road. All right, so if that wasn't the case, you'd see this geometry wouldn't look correct. And in fact, we'll go in just a second. We'll place one on the other side, and you'll see what to do, when you place these cells. But basically, just left click to reverse these direction of arrows if needed. In this particular case, geometry looks good, so nothing needs to be done. So I'm going to just reset and accept that cell. Okay, so now we still have I didn't clip. To add a clipping reference, all you got to do is go into, I'm going to go into Project Explorer. All right, then we're going to go to Model here, Civil Cells. You can see now I've got 2, right? Also notice that if we look at the general category, this one that I built up there is valid for placement, but this one that I've placed is not valid anymore. So anytime a cell is processed, it's no longer valid for placement. Now, I could drop it and rebuild the cell if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that, but you could do that. All right, now where I was headed to add a clipping boundary. I forgot to show you this earlier, so just right click and say add clipping boundary. And I'll show you when we place this one on the other side, what happens. And basically it just clips the sidewalk, gets rid of your shoulder, your sidewalking end conditions. All right. Generally what I do for T intersections, I don't clip. So I generally use I want the option there, but at the same time, I generally use to get rid of these 2D elements here through that intersection, you got to use a template display rule to turn all this off. And that's explained in the, in your T intersection videos, placement and edit videos. All right, so let's place this cell one more time. All right, so I can actually also come in here, right click, place civil cell. And then this time I'm going to choose mainline edge of pavement, secondary road center line, data point for secondary road length control. So you just don't want it right way down here, right? You want it at least 50 feet. So I'll come up here and data point. Now, this is a good example of these elements. In other words, these reference elements are not going the same direction as what the references are the cell was built on. All right, so what I need to do, I might have to flip that for sure. We want that going from left to right, and then I want this going from away from. So I'm going to flip that one. So you want this to match these direction of arrows, and I'm flipping that just by hovering over the data point. Right. That's what I did. So I think this thing was initially. We'll just go back to the way it was initially. So it's like that. That doesn't look like an intersection. Geometry is not correct. So what you do next is go look is hey, are these reference elements matching what that cell was built on? And we know they're not, because I just said, these were built going left to right, looking away from the mainline roadway, and then the secondary road's going away. And so I'll reset. Now you can see I've got to select corridors to be clipped. So if I want to come in and clip this, I'll go choose that. We'd reset and accept that cell. Okay, so you can see that civil cell placed there, and that clipping as well. That's the basics of creating a civil cell. Obviously, you got to figure out what references to use, etc. Placing something like a curb ramp, you're going to use curb flow line, back top curb, things like that. But like I said, just a quick overview of how cells are